Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission meeting to order on the 12th of June, approximately 10 a.m. Britt, roll call.
Commissioners Brown, Chalette,
Here.
Pickens, present. Smith, Velasquez, present. Vice Chairman Fuller,
Present.
Chairman Vieira.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And if you could please stand and join me in saluting our flag. Place your right hand over your heart and begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start off with presentations. AB 109. It's my understanding that Mr. Fondu would not be with us today, so Mr. Dorico and Captain Nelson will be sharing some information. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was going to start off with you, Pat. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I did. What you have in front of you, members of the commission, is, and it's something I would ask not be disseminated publicly at this point, but it's basically just to give you a little clearer picture of the slides I'm about to discuss with you, because I think our slides are going to be a little bit out of focus. I'm going to talk very briefly about AB 109, some of the numbers that we're dealing with. Sure. And then I will let Mr. Dorico discuss some of the challenges that we're facing. As you can see from this report was generated on Monday. At this point in time, we have 400 AB 109 individuals have been released into the Lancaster Station area. That's actually the largest percentage of AB 109 releasees anywhere in the county. As you can see, we have almost 14% of all the AB 109 individuals here in the Lancaster Station area. Next closest, I believe, is Compton at 11%. Just to give you a little idea of what that means, LASD is responsible for right around 3,000 of the AB 109 folks in LA County, but they also are responsible for about another 2,000 to 2,500 in the neighboring jurisdictions, some of the smaller jurisdictions that aren't equipped to handle any type of supervision or compliance checks. So we have a team of 50 deputies for the entire county and a lieutenant that oversees these 50 deputies, and they're responsible for conducting all the compliance checks for all of the AB 109 folks under our jurisdiction, if you will. The problem with that, and you'll be able to see here in, let's see, just an arrow for this thing. Next slide. One more. Is that we have several absconders, which is basically they aren't reporting like they're supposed to. The problem that we run into is, and what is taking up most of the team's time, is locating these absconders. There's really no motivation for anybody that's coming out under AB 109 to even report, because the maximum they're looking at is a 9-day flash incarceration. So under the old system where you came out on parole, if you didn't report to your parole officer, it was probably a given you were going to end up having a parole violation warrant, and that you would likely go back into custody at the state prison for a minimum, or I shouldn't say minimum, but let's say up to an additional year before you were actually re-paroled. At this point, we don't have that option, so the worst that they're looking at is a 9-day turnaround before they're back out again. So like I said, there's really not a lot of motivation to even report. As you can tell, some of these absconders are on their 5th time of not reporting. 713 of them, as you can see, failed to report at least twice and were put back into custody. Go ahead, next. At any rate, that takes up an awful lot of time for the teams, just to try to locate some of these folks. As you can also tell from the charts that I've provided, 1,500 of these folks that have come out didn't even provide an address. So some of them are transient, some of them intentionally didn't provide an address where they could be checked or have any kind of compliance mandates put on them. And that's, again, taking up resources with the teams trying to find them. How we've been addressing that is by having our local teams conduct compliance checks for those that are in our area. And we still do occasionally get the team up here. There is a North End team, believe it or not. We just don't see them very often. And they will do compliance checks in conjunction with our teams frequently on dates that we've pre-planned through the Antelope Valley Crime Fighting Initiative. As you can see from here, this is just a week's worth of time. Year to date, we've had 66 that are basically parolee at larges that were released under this post-supervised things. PALs are actually, I believe that this stat came from the state, and those are actually regular parolees that have failed to report, and then our PSP population there. At any rate, that's it for our enforcement portion of it. Like I said, I'm going to pass it off to Mr. DeRico to discuss some of the challenges we're facing with probation's portion of it.
Before we move on, it's interesting, the statistics you provided, but one of the things you said is that there are 50 deputies that have been assigned to supervise the AB 109 releases, correct?
Correct.
Overall. So if you look at the 400 that are in Lancaster, 300 in Palmdale, we should have about 12 full-time people working here just for those.
I believe that
population.
the current North End team is configured with 10 deputies and a sergeant. However, like I said, at this point, they are not assigned here full-time. Obviously, that would be our preference, but they're really spread too thin county-wide to be a quote-unquote full-time team up here. And despite the fact that we have the largest percentages, they probably should be.
So when you say that they're not employed full-time, how often do we benefit from their services?
I don't have the stats on that ahead of me. I'd be just guessing based on anecdotal evidence, but I can get that for the next time on how often we're actually seeing them deployed up here.
Safe to say it's less than we would desire.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
I think that's safe to say. And they're dealing with the same types of issues that we are with carping and things like that, where they're, for a week at a time, they may be working the courts because of the carping mandates. So it's not just the fact that there's too few to go around countywide, but also some of the other mandates that they have upon them.
Thank you.
Excuse me, would that, Captain, would that also be the fact that you're now pulling from your own resources that you'd be using otherwise elsewhere to cover some of these issues that we're having here in the community?
I think that's safe to say. Although the teams that we have at the station were conducting parole compliance checks before AB 109 came into play anyway. So we're still doing, we're still furthering our mission by doing compliance checks, whether it be AB 109 releasees or actual parolees or sex registrant parolees, whatever the case may be. So the missions are in line, but we obviously are using resources that we might be using elsewhere, if we had the teams full-time.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Do you feel at this point it's somewhat counterproductive in the way it's kind of playing out?
I wouldn't say it's counterproductive. It's just that, like anywhere else, everybody is competing for a diminishing resource pool. And because of that, we probably are not getting the type of coverage. Well, I know we're not getting the kind of coverage I would like to see. Whether or not it's equitable would be another argument for somebody who's got a county-wide view of where the team's spending all our time, and I frankly don't have that. I just know when we have them and we have use of them. Okay.
Thanks, Pat.
Mr. DeRico, before you get started,
Yes.
Where's, Eric, where's the probation office?
Mr. Ufondu is the director now for supervision of the AB 109 program in the North LA County, for specifically the Antelope Valley. He has requested two consecutive meetings to be present to do an AB 109 update, and at the last minute has canceled that presentation.
Why?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I have no idea. So I'm going to discuss probation's issue here and go back to a little history here and what direction we're going. And as Dr. Vieira pointed out, issues as it's impacting our own resources there within our community for their program. If we go back several years now, prior to AB 109, we had a program that was put in place by CDCR that was known as non-revocable parole. Does everyone remember non-revocable parole? With certain persons based on their last offense that they were incarcerated for, that they would be released as nonviolent or a non-threat to the community and were determined to be on non-revocable parole, which means that they could only be sent back to state prison or to the county jail by committing a secondary offense. They could not go based on a compliance issue or a parole check, or they were unsupervised. Based on that program, the Department of Corrections went through a significant evaluation of all prisoners to be released into the community to determine their eligibility for that program. Through that, there was a significant weeding process that they took what they considered all those low-level offenders and released them back out into our community and our surrounding communities. Upon that, they made a determination as well that they had to look back beyond that because there was such an impact in the communities as it impacted our crime that they had to reevaluate those persons based on not only their last offense, but prior offenses for violence, sexual offenses, those type of things. And they took a number of those folks and re-incarcerated them based on that disqualification. So along comes, based on partly on the federal mandate from the federal court, as well as CDCR's proposal, because let's not kid ourselves, this program, as it's designed by AB 109, was designed by the Department of Corrections, not by the court, not by the governor's office. It was designed by the Department of Corrections, and that was to relieve overcrowding or what was considered conditions in the state prison system. And at that time, it was a federal court order of 35,000, I believe, was the number of population reduction in a phase, and then another 35,000. And right now the governor is facing a possible indictment by the federal court where he's not in compliance with that order. The problem with AB 109 is several things. AB 109 does not do the same thing it did with non-revocable parole. It does not look at their past history. It's based solely on their most recent offense and why they're incarcerated. The second problem is that the Department of Corrections already went through a weeding out process prior to that with non-revocable parole. So the mindset to say that these are low-level offenders that were currently incarcerated after non-revocable parole has been found to be untrue. The Department of Probation has actually published some significant numbers that implies that probably 70% of these individuals that are on their caseload here in LA County would not qualify under non-revocable parole, so how could they qualify under this program? Then we have another issue. The issue here locally, and it directly flies in the face of the Department of Probation. Back when this program was implemented in September of 2011, so this program's been around for some time now, the Sheriff's Department and Probation entered into a program with the County of Los Angeles. Initially, the Sheriff had provided their own proposal on how to manage this program. Probation had submitted a proposal to the Board of Supervisors on how they wanted to run the program, and at some point the Board of Supervisors made a determination there would be a marrying of the two agencies, and the Sheriff's Department would be responsible for compliance, as well Probation was responsible for supervision, the mandated programs that are required through AB 109 with reentry. So what has happened now, the Sheriff's Department has been very active, and this commission has also had presentations from the department head for that, Chief Lopez, as well as the lieutenant that's running that program, talking about the fact that how many compliance checks have been done, how many of these individuals exist in our communities, and you can see significantly we're impacted here in the city of Lancaster as compared to the rest of the county, and as well as what is being considered recidivism, because let's not kid ourselves about this. Probation is ranking their success on the amount of what they consider recidivism. So this program is being totally based on its success or failure on whether or not people go back to jail. Okay? So what is being considered as recidivism? Historically, recidivism was considered if you had a program violation, a parole violation, then that was recidivism. In this program, that's not considered recidivism. Recidivism is only consideration if you catch a new case, okay, unrelated to your last incarcerated charge. That within itself is not really evaluation of recidivism, okay? Again, we need to think about what is the purpose of enforcement, law enforcement, the district attorney's office, how we all work out there is to protect the public at large, not to create more victims out in the communities. As of this date, the Sheriff's Department has continued to hold up their end of the deal that they've presented to the Board of Supervisors, and again, Captain Nelson pointed out there's been some challenges as it relates to budget issues and those things as well. As of this date, probation, we have no presence here. As of this date, probation, as of just a month ago, probation finally allocated a location to assign the officers they're going to assign to this program for the supervision on their side. Okay. As of today, we don't have a day reporting center in the Antelope Valley, which we were supposed to receive from the onset of this program that manages these releasees and gets them into programs to condition them or work with them not to reoffend again, creating more victims in our community. The last part of this is the fact that us, as the City of Lancaster, based on what Captain Nelson told you with our compliance teams, we've bared the burden for that compliance. I don't even know at this point, and I'm going to start evaluating that, and that's part of why I'm asking the Commission to speak today, for me to speak, is I would like to put together some type of program here to evaluate the impact that is on our community, what I believe is a lack of supervision of these individuals, and again, based on a criteria for compliance that I think it doesn't work. It's not being done. Okay, how are we facilitating ensure these individuals aren't reoffending? What programs are they going to implement and who's going to do them? My understanding, we involved ourselves here at the city with several of our community-based organizations in the RFP process to become a part of that day reporting center, and met extensively with probation to make sure that day reporting center was put in the same location adjacent to the compliance unit from probation, so therefore there would be interaction on a daily basis from those individuals. That hasn't even happened. The RFP was awarded to a company who's a for-profit company that exists in several places in the state and out of state that runs these type of programs that has no affiliation with any of our local organizations that already provide these services. So that's an issue for us right at this point. So what I think is appropriate at this point, and this is just my opinion, and again, depending on how the Commission feels, I would like to form a committee. I'd like to really study this program, its impact on us, okay, and the far-reaching impact, and then from the resource management issue as well. Okay, this impacts all of us. It impacts all the law enforcement agencies here. It impacts the district attorney's office. It impacts the court calendar. It impacts us in a huge way that I don't believe we've taken an active role in looking at as a community. And that's all I have for now. If the Commission would like to go forward with that, I'm ready to be heavily involved in that.
Couple questions, Lee. When AB 109 first came out, we had some talk in here at one of our meetings about the fact that they were committing crimes to get the bracelets off and some of those things, and people were going to do some politicking, if you will, to get some kind of correction to this bill, or some relief, if you will. Are you aware of anything that's been done through the state to relook at this?
No. No, there's been no discussion beyond that point, because again, the part of it for the state is, this is a battle, and you're seeing it on the state level as far as the governor is actually fighting now this order to a certain degree because of the impact on local communities. So the local communities are making enough noise, and probably we need to make more about the impact on our local resources. But that is, in fact, you're exactly describing what was taking place. Based on the conditions of this, these individuals were out committing some minor offense to basically remove themselves from supervision from state parole and put themselves on supervision of the county probation department. And there's probably a reason why they did that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously, no reporting center, no presence in the valley.
Correct.
is obviously not acceptable, and I think I speak for most of us. Whatever you need us to do, committee-wise or whatever, we'd be glad to assist in this.
Well, I think it's important, based on the actions of this commission and the success we've had in identifying these issues and bringing them forward to our city council, that I think it's important now that we take a leadership role for our community, for the resources that are impacting us here, and the fact that we have more and more victims on a continual basis out there that the district attorney's office and law enforcement sees every day that have no voice. We actually look at these individuals like they're a specific, special class of people, rather than the fact that they're out there victimizing folks in our community. That is not only the pain and suffering that people suffer, but beyond that, the resource drain for this community that we could be doing other things with.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the presentation. It's very insightful, and obviously you put a lot of thought and effort into the presentation today, and also suggestions for actions. I'd really like to continue to try and get Mr. Ufandu here to address the commission, not only for the commission, but to show publicly and let people come and ask their questions as well. I don't know if this Wednesday morning time is obviously difficult for him, perhaps a second or fourth Tuesday of the month in the evening at a city council meeting might be something that better fits his agenda. I don't know, but maybe we could explore that as well. But I think you're definitely hitting the nail on the head that one, as a community, as a city, we need to take a stronger role in responding to what's either happening or not happening in our community and what it is that we believe the best direction is. And in order to play that role and enter into that discussion in an informed manner, I think we do need to determine the magnitude of the impact on the city, so that we're speaking from confidence and strength rather than supposition. So
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
I would support the formation of that committee as suggested, should the other members agree.
Any other comments from commissioners? No? I would be, as one commissioner, willing to be on that committee, and I think we do need to move forward and do some research and study on that, and if probation, for whatever reason, can't come our way, then maybe we need to take a look at going down and paying a visit to whoever would be appropriate to do so as well,
Yes,
as one consideration, so.
Right. Well, Deputy Chief Reaver Bingham has come and spoke to us before. I think it's appropriate, since he is responsible for this program based on its mandates, that I truly believe they're deficient in. At this point, we're almost 2 years into this program and we're still deficient. The money did come to the county. What has been done with it? Okay, I know what the Sheriff's Department's doing, believe me. And on top of that, I know what we're doing. But I have no idea what they're doing. Okay, there's a total lack of accountability as it relates to this issue that there need to be accountable for.
Well, there is a consensus among the commission here that we'll move forward with the formulation of a committee and work with you, Mr. Draco, on moving forward on that.
Thank you, Dr. Vieira. Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Public business from the floor, agendized items. Citizens who would like to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any agendized item may do so when the item is being considered by the commission. People, please complete a speaker card and identify the agenda item you would like to discuss. And speakers are limited to 3 minutes each.
We have no speaker cards.
Thank you. We'll move on to the consent calendar.
Dr. Vieira?
Yes.
I think there was an additional speaker from the Sheriff's Department that wanted to speak.
Okay.
Deputy Ruiz is just going to go over our arrest stats and
Okay.
et cetera for the last couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time. If we can go maybe one more. Next page. Thank you, sir. I'm going to go over the statistics for the directed patrol units and all the specialized units at our Lancaster Station for their activities for the month of May. Starting with our top core team. Part 1 crimes for the month of May were 3. And Part 2 crimes were 57. In addition, I added the request of how many parolees were also arrested, whether for fresh charges or violations, and that number was 17. So hopefully that gave a little more clarification of how many percentage-wise are out there committing crimes in addition to the 57. So that would be a percentage of the 77. Next page, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Specifically, what I wanted to highlight with the top core team is they were very successful during the ABC FI operation on the month of May on the 8th. The operation helped alone with patrol saturation of the city, which led to 20 felony arrests, 24 misdemeanor arrests, and also 3 firearms and several ounces of methamphetamine were taken off the streets. That alone was headed up by the top core team, and it was a very successful operation, which we're proud to report. And then the burglary suppression team, also not to be outdone, also had very good statistics. Felony arrest of 15, parolees of those 15 were actually 2. Search warrants that they executed were 3. Of those 3, they had 8 warrant arrests. Ramey warrants of identified personnel that were burglars. There's 4, which I'm sure will also be arrested shortly. Recovered stolen property was $2,500, and 6 firearms were also recovered. Specifically, what the burglary suppression team was dealing with in the month of May was a series of about a dozen burglaries, which we call hot prowl burglaries. That's a specific type of burglary in which the residents, and these happen primarily at night, where residents were sleeping inside their homes, and the suspect actually made entry either through an open window or an open door. And this brazen act, was extremely dangerous. Most burglaries are sometimes daytime where they kick in the door and make entry and no one's home. He intended to do this while there's occupants in the house, which is extremely not only dangerous, obviously dangerous for the occupants, but also for him if there's an armed family member. But that being said, the burglary suppression team worked tirelessly, putting in hundreds of hours of investigative efforts over the 3 dozen or few weeks that they were doing the investigation. They made public pleas to the general public requesting any information leading to the arrest, as well as also requesting that the general public sleep safe at night, making sure they're locking the doors. Fortunately, the public was very forthcoming with information with help of the investigative efforts of the burglary suppression team. They were able to effectively arrest a Mr. Gus on the 29th of May. The investigation is still ongoing. I can't give other information outside of that, not to interfere with the investigation. But because of their efforts also, as far as surveillance efforts, late nights, long hours, the entire team received a commendation, and very well deserved, because they took in my opinion, someone who was a danger to the public more so than others because of his illegal activity. So, good for the burglary suppression team. Next slide, please. And the land cap team, they also had 32 felony arrests, misdemeanor arrest of 2, firearms recovered, in addition to 5 parolees also with fresh charges or parole violations. Estimated illegal narcotics was $1,253. They also had a specific incident also on May 8th, while the ABCFI operation was also in full swing, where they were assisting the Lancaster code enforcement officers with an inspection of a location out in Kingtree. During that inspection of the residence, the deputies did discover ammunition and edge weapons, which were deemed to be illegal weapons. After an additional search warrant of the location was executed and requested, more firearms were recovered along with a methamphetamine pipe, and arson explosives had to respond because there was also an IED, an improvised explosive device, also with some gasoline canisters. So this gentleman was also taken into custody, and there's no more concern, at least in that area for the time being. And the LANCAP team did a very good job, especially on that day. Let's see. And next slide, please. And we've heard of Shark Week before, many times on television. We like to call narcotics efforts in the month of May, the 13th through the 15th, as Weed Week, because they had a very successful week, which I'd like to highlight. Aside from the statistics of the felony arrests, that comparison to patrol and the crew had, patrol had 52 felony arrests in compared to the 14 that the crew had. Ounces and grams of methamphetamine. You could see the marijuana difference. The crew did 7,358 compared to 438, and that's significant because on a specific Shark Week, or Marijuana Week, like I said, on May 13th, the narcotics team executed search warrants in 3 locations within the city of Lancaster. Combined total efforts of all these search warrants led to the arrest of 4 suspects for the cultivation and sale of marijuana, theft of utility of over $35,000 of electricity that was being used to support these homegrown marijuana plants in these locations, which was over 500 plants that were recovered, over 4 pounds of finished product, which is very significant, and even more importantly, a concealed firearm was found in the location, which was later determined by LAPD to be used in a homicide. So that's also significant. In addition to the 1, they also had 7 other firearms recovered from the streets, so 8 total for the month. And I believe one last one. This is a picture of one of the residents within the search warrant on the 13th that had marijuana that was cultivated inside the residence. So it was pretty extensive. A lot of electricity was being used, not only for the ventilation system, but also for the heating lamps that came with it. And these were 3 different locations. And also on the 15th, they also had 2 other locations that also had significant amount of evidence recovered. This is the end of my presentation, unless there's any other questions.
Yeah, I got a question, Deputy Reese.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned on a couple of occasions the ABCFI operation.
Yes, sir.
And I understand that it resulted in arrest, but I don't know what it means. What is an ABCFI?
It's the Antelope Valley Crime Fighting Initiative, and my understanding it has to do with a combination of Palmdale and Lancaster's efforts, along with other entities throughout the county, that do patrol saturations in the area, either stemming from crime sprees or even more specific gang-related investigations. And it's saturation throughout the city that happens periodically. Right, sir?
I can speak a little bit to that. The ABCFI was actually a program that was started several years back. It used to be run by then Lieutenant Bob Johnson. It's now being run or coordinated by Lieutenant Larry Gregg. The lieutenant acts as basically a conduit and coordinator for the resources that we share. If a particular problem, for instance, is identified, for instance, gang activity in eastern Lancaster, the lieutenant develops a plan to address that identified problem, and we share resources with Palmdale, the cops team, sometimes gang units from outside the area, and bring those resources to bear on that problem. The caveat is that we're expected to do the same thing for other areas, but it's all in the Antelope Valley. So we basically meet at least once a month with both stations. All of the specialized teams send a representative to this meeting to meet with this lieutenant, and then Lieutenant Gregg and the teams and the station supervisors, whether it be me or Lieutenant Kroger, determine what it is that we want to address or what problem it is that we want to combat, and then develop that plan and then schedule that operation. So we actually have an operation scheduled tentatively for every week, be here or in Palmdale's area, and it could be anything from a truancy sweep to a particular set of gang warrants. For instance, this morning we used teams from all of our specialized teams from Palmdale, and teams from our Operation Safe Streets to do an 8-location warrant for Black Menace Mafia gang members that were implicated in a shooting a couple weeks back. So that's just an example of what the Antelope Valley Crime Fighting Initiative actually is. It's kind of a one-man show, but it's an important position, and it allows us to bring resources to bear that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
So it sounds like the collaboration between Lancaster and the Palmdale Sheriffs has been a pretty good thing for all of us in the Antelope Valley.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I've worked several operations with that, and it allows us a lot of flexibility. Perfect example, like the captain said, truancy sweeps would normally happen during the daytime, or we can do a curfew at nighttime. So there's a lot of flexibility with that, where we can focus in a specific troubled area of the city and focus on a specific type of crime, or if we're looking for a specific type of gang, and it's pretty much all hours of the day. 4th of July also, fireworks enforcement has a lot of uses.
Other comments, questions from the commission? No, hearing none. Thank you, Deputy Ruiz.
Thank you very much.
Yes. That'll be coming up here pretty quickly in the report section. All right, that's okay. That's okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on with the consent calendar, approval of the minutes. Commissioners, if you've had a chance to take a look at that,
I'd like to move to approve the minutes for May 8th, 2013.
Any discussion? Call for the vote. And that's unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to continued business discussion regarding reuse of Mariloma County Complex. I'll share with the Commission that it was probably 4 to 5 weeks ago, myself, Mr. Lee Smith, Mr. Jericho, Mayor Paris, and City Manager Mark Bozigian actually met with Sheriff Baca relative to Mariloma and the potential use of that. That has come out public since that time, but the discussion was around the use of the Mariloma facility, and my understanding at this time is that that will be used for a women's facility. Timeline, I'm not sure of. I don't know if whether the captain and or anybody else may know what that timeline may be, but that is something that appears will be coming to the valley. We talked about the partnership maybe with education to provide a service for those inmates, if you will, there at that time as well. So we think it's something collectively that would be good for those coming up this way, good for the economy, and good use of the facility. So just wanted to share those that discussion that took place and see if there's any comments with regards to that, or if there's anything else you would have to add to that, Mr. Jericho.
The only thing I would say is the sheriff needs bed space. Okay, so if we have our choice of what bed space will be occupied in our community, I think this is the right choice. Okay, especially based on the collaboration with the school districts and everything as well too for that education component. So I'm relieved to hear that, honestly, and I believe that was the sheriff's plan from the onset, that's what direction he wanted to try to go. And I do want to commend the sheriff for. He didn't have to give consideration to the community. He didn't have to make the trip here. He made the trip personally by himself and met with everyone by himself to have this discussion. So he needs to be commended for that, because that's not something he had to do.
No, and it wasn't.
What he wants with his facility.
It was not a 15-minute conversation. I mean, he was here an hour and a half to 2 hours, and went deep into this conversation and took all stakeholders, if you will, into consideration. So, yeah, kudos to him and the department.
Do we have any indication of what level of offender is going to be housed in that facility?
Pat, based on that facility, I don't know where it's rated based on that. I would imagine, the female population has grown significantly over the years. So part of we're talking about Century, right? Correct? Where the housing issues are. So this will probably be more accommodating for that. But again, I'm not knowing right now, and that's certainly something we can bring back to the commission and report that out on what level of offender they're planning on incarcerating there.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will now move on to commission staff presentations, updates, reports, monthly crime stats. Mr. Cobalt.
Thank you, Chairman Vieira. This measurement period goes from April 28th to June 1st, 2013. We had as far as our Part 1 crimes go, we had totals or a low of 61, which was in the most recent week measured, week 22. Week 18 was our peak week of 83. As far as arrests go for total arrests, our lowest week was week 22, which was May 26th through June 1st. We had 154 then. Our peak week for arrests was 234 from May 5th to May 11th. As we take a look at our weekly average of Part 1 crimes, we dipped a little bit this month. Last month we reported 77.5 average and median for the weekly Part 1 crimes. We dipped down to a weekly average of 71.8 and 72 for our median during this reporting period. Now, this is a chart that we used in our ComStat meeting with the Sheriff's Department, and it's kind of interesting to look at because you can see in 8 of the last 12 months, when we do a year-to-year comparison by month, we have come in lower than the previous year's months. So those are some good trajectories we want to keep going. As we look at May 2013 compared to May 2012, we're looking at a reduction of 18%. When we take a look at our crime rate, since the Commission is concerned about crime rates, if we look back 12 months from June of 2012 to May of 2013, we're looking right now at a crime rate of 269.43, which is down 3.75% from our end-of-year crime rate for 2012. And that crime rate at that time was 279.93. As we take a look at the most active reporting districts for Part 1 crimes during this reporting period, 1135 led the way with 54, and I'll show you the placement of those on the map in just a second. 1137 was second with 49, 1126 with 43, 1132 with 38, and 1127 with 28. As we look at these areas on the map, taking a look at our peak area, which was at 1135. Runs basically from H down to Avenue J, from Challenger Way over to about 30th Street East with a few deviations in there. The primary areas you can see down here when we look at densities was around the 20th Street East and Avenue J area, between the Walmart parcels down there and the excuse me, the apartment complexes that are down in the adjoining areas. When we take a look at 1137, you can see the majority of the areas are kind of in a mirror of that 1135. It's the area south of Avenue J, right around 20th Street East and a little bit west of that location. Almost the highest density for 1137 was basically from Avenue J down to Avenue K, from Challenger Way over to 20th Street East. You start getting outside of that area and things drop off pretty quickly. .1126 is basically Avenue J down to Avenue M, from 10th Street West over to 20th Street West. Again, this area, if you get north of about K4, K6, right in there, and go north up to Avenue J, that's where the majority of the activity is. Everything south of there is pretty sparse. .1132, basically Avenue I down to Avenue J, from Sierra Highway over to Challenger Way. You can see that's pretty evenly distributed across the reporting area. However, one of the things that we can take a look at in this particular reporting district is you can see how so much of the activity is centered on top of the apartments. You start getting away from the apartment complexes and things taper off pretty quick. Finally, 1127 is our final reporting district in our top 5. The vast majority of the areas are along Valley Central Way from basically Lancaster Boulevard down to Avenue J. And then in the area that's a little bit north and west of the college, you can see the other density here, and the rest of the density for the reporting district is pretty open. Take a look at residence burglary and the frequencies by reporting district. Top 3 were 1137 with 15, 1135 with 14, and 1132 with 6. As far as larcenies involving vehicles, 1137 had 9, 1135 had 5, 1127, 32, and 33 each had 4. We take a look at the 52-week trends by Part 1 crime category. We basically had four Part 1 crimes showing an upward trend and 4 showing a downward trend. First is homicide. Again, homicide because we had a couple during week 5 of this year, which elevated things. Homicide is an extremely low frequency crime for us. So far this year, we've actually had 3 that occurred within the city. So when you have 2 within a week, it makes it look like things are going up until that gets halfway through the 52-week cycle. As far as rape goes, again, it's a relatively low frequency crime for us. We average 1.07 rapes per week, and we had a few weeks in the recent weeks where we actually had 2 reported rapes, so that threw us up above. And given that, since there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so about 7 weeks where we had 2 during the first half of this year, that makes it appear as if we're trending up. As far as assaults go, we're still below the baseline. We average 15.47 assaults per week. You can see where the blue line is up here. That's where our baseline is. We're still well below the baseline, but we had some good tapering off at the end of last year, and you can kind of see the elevation going on right now. In fact, we reported that last reporting period to you, or last measurement period. And at that time, we were still showing a downward slope, but I cautioned at that time that if this continued, we'd probably see things start ticking up with an upward trend, and that's what we're actually seeing now. As far as larceny goes, we average about 40.50 larcenies per week. You can see at the end of last year, we had some pretty good weeks where we were below our baseline, and things were pretty well down. We can see that we've had several weeks during the first part of this year where we've actually broke over the baseline, and so since larceny is our most frequent crime, or Part 1 crime, this is one of the things that we need to be aware of. If we can get this back down where this is a downward trend, then we'll actually see that crime rate number or percentage drop. Then we get into robbery, and you can see we have a nice downward trend with robbery. We average about just under 6 robberies per week. We've had 1, 2, 3 weeks where we were above our baseline, and we had a pretty good start to the year. You can see this is the beginning of the calendar year for 2013, and you can see up until about week 15 we were doing really well, and things spiked on us a little bit, then it dropped off and spiked up again. Hopefully we can keep that from getting to be a regular pattern. And then with burglary, again, towards the end of last year, we had some pretty good drop-off, and then you can kind of see an arc here kind of ticking up just a little bit, and now things are tapering off for about the last 10 weeks or so, and you can see the graph actually drop or falling off here, and that's a good thing for us. And finally, with grand theft auto, you can see, or not finally, there's arson also. Grand theft auto, you can see the downward trend, and we are below the baseline. In fact, it's pretty impressive the way we've been below the baseline. We average about a little over 13 vehicle thefts per week, but yet you can see back pretty much at the beginning of the year, at least week 7, we have not had over 8 auto thefts in 1 week for an extended period of time now. And then finally, arson has finally shown a downward trend, and that's where we got some of those arsons that we had earlier or at the tail end of last year and the first part of this year, kind of moved into the last half of that 52-week cycle. This is the Part 1 crimes that were reported during this particular period. There were 359. This shows where crime actually went up when we compare it to the last reporting period, so you can see where it went up and where it declined. These are our repeat call locations. About the only thing that's really popped up that's new on here is the McDonald's restaurant over on the east side, about 20th Street and Avenue J. They are starting to pop up periodically now. This shows spatially where the higher rate calls for service are. And this is our crime forecast for June of 2013. We're forecasting 381 Part 1 crimes for the month of June. You can see down at the bottom here we put our data for last month. We forecasted 375. We actually had 355, which is an accuracy rate of 95%. And of course, these data are available on the web. I know many of you have participated in the youth court that the city runs, and just from some preliminary numbers we're getting in looking at the impact of the youth court. In our preliminary numbers, they're showing that about 78% of the youth that have completed the youth court have not reoffended since their initial ticket. So that shows some pretty good results as far as the youth court goes. And that's my report.
Comments, questions? Got to say though, Jim, 95% accuracy in your projections, that's impressive. That's when you...
Yeah, we actually, IBM has made us kind of a model location. They've included us in their Smartest Cities webpage and things like that, and we actually got an award from one of the folks that partner with IBM for what we're doing. So it's pretty good stuff.
Lots of implications when you look at that and coordinate with the resources that you have as well. So very good.
Also, Jim, that 78% non-repeaters.
Did I say 78? I meant to say 87 if I said 78.
87 on the kids. Having been the speaker at probably, 3 of the last 4 presentations, just seeing the interaction probably of the parents and the kids is, that is really good. And one of the kids, two presentations ago, is actually going to be in our football camp out at the college. We comped his tuition.
Can you do me a favor and get me that young man's name, because it might be nice to invite him back to be actually a presenter at one of the completion ceremonies, so they can hear back from.
Yeah, will do.
That'd be a great thing.
Will do.
With the commission's permission, I'd like to have Jim come do a presentation at the next meeting about the success and the involvement of the community in that community youth court and diverting those cases from law enforcement based on their referrals on the evaluation of these individuals and their contact with them and refer them to the court. And they're pretty darn active, okay? Between Jim and Anne Marie, believe me, they're very busy, okay, and with the group that they bring in. And this is getting to be how many days a week now? How many interns do you have now, Jim, working too as well?
Well, we staffed 6 this year, and the great thing about that is we get some really good support from the social work programs at both CSU Bakersfield and CSU Northridge, and we're working on trying to come up with an agreement now also with CSU LA, because their social work program also has a number of students that come from the Antelope Valley. So the more interns that we can get into this program, the more we can help, or the more children that we can help and families that we can help.
And we haven't done a presentation for you for some time on that, so just to bring back that philosophy and what direction we're going with it, and how that diversion mindset on some of these first-time offenders, how effective that's been. So with your permission, I'd like to...
That'd be great. Let's put on the July.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe we already have the arrest stats. Is there anything in addition to what was already provided earlier, or no? Okay. We'll move on to California Highway Patrol update, and we have, is it the incoming commander or the current commander, Gretchen Jacobs? So welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I'd like to start off with stats. For the month of May, we had a total number of 107 collisions. Of those collisions, 2 of them were fatal collisions. However, we had 0 fatal collisions during the Memorial Day MEP, our maximum enforcement period, so those happened during the rest of the month. With DUIs, we had 9, and we had a total of 261 arrests for DUIs for LA County during the Memorial Day MEP. We have 45 injury collisions out of the total 107. We had total enforcement contacts of just under 2,000, so we had 1,949. Of that, 1,357 were arrests, and of those arrests, 58 were actual DUIs. We had 1 pursuit last month, and then I wanted to talk to you about something that may be important to family members or people that you know. We are actively recruiting at the moment, and we are going to have a general recruitment seminar being held next month on July 13th at 10 o'clock in the morning, and it's going to be held at the Arcadia City Council chambers, but it's for all of LA County and even anybody throughout the state who is going to be in the area. This is going to be a very valuable time for people who are interested in law enforcement, specifically CHP. And in September, not only are we going to have another CHP cadet class of about 150 individuals, but we'll also open up our online application process again for about 3 days. We did that in January of this year, and we had, in that 3-day period, we had 22,000 applications. So I anticipate having that many, if not more, in that 3-day period. Maybe we'll be able to open it up for a little bit longer period of time. I don't have the dates yet. I will bring that to you. And then just as a side note, we usually only get about 10%, so only about 2,200 of them were actually eligible to go through the process to become an officer. So that's pretty interesting there as well. For additional information, my PAO, Gil Hernandez, is here, so he'll be able to provide you with additional information if you do want that. In addition, Officer Hernandez has brought every 15-minute DVDs with him, so if you want, I think, what, we have 5 of them, or 9, so we have 9 of them if any of you want them to take back for use. And then finally, what I'd like to do is introduce you to Lieutenant Eric Bernier, who's going to be taking the spot of Lieutenant Robert Lund, who's leaving us. Unfortunately, he's going to go to Newhall area, and hopefully he'll only spend a short period of time there, and maybe they'll be able to do a swap, because Lieutenant Bernier lives in the Santa Clarita area, so maybe we'll be able to get that in a year or so. We'll see. And then finally, I do have business cards available for anybody who wants one if you want to get at the end, and I will give Britt one of my cards before I leave. So, thank you. Any questions?
Here, and I would like to have a card and a DVD if I could as well. That'd be great. And welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, and I'd like to introduce and welcome the head deputy district attorney, John Morris. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. At your request, Mr. Sherwood prepared some statistics for showing the number of felony filings and misdemeanor filings we've had. And unfortunately, it's discouraging. Doing a comparison between 5 months of 2012, January 1st to January 1st, and comparing that to the first 5 months of 2013, we Commander, that's what you're trying to tell me. Thank you. All right, thank you. Sorry about that. Or increase law enforcement efforts and resources. So I can't make a determination on any of those. All I can tell you is for the increases, the numbers are stark. Okay. A comparison of April of 2013 to May 2013 for the number of defendants filed on, not the number of cases, but for the number of defendants filed upon, it increased from 148 in April 2013 to 164. That's an increase of 16 defendants. For that same calculation for misdemeanors, that increased from, it actually decreased from 383 to 378. So that decrease of 5, that could be for any reason or just a statistical anomaly. Or it could have been a DA called in sick one day. I don't know. So those are the numbers. I got to tell you, being up here in Antelope Valley, I'm happy to be here, but I'm frightened by the amount of violent crime I see. The amount of residential burglaries I've seen filed in this courthouse astound me. And so one of the first steps I took after reviewing the disposition reports, which are the closing case memo in every case that we have, is when I saw that number, I met with my calendar deputies and I informed all of them that for every residential burglary, presumptively, everybody goes to state prison. I don't care if they're 18 years old and no prior record, because we have to stop not only the hot prowls, but people kicking in their neighbors' doors when they're under arrest or when their neighbors are at work. So that's our first step. And for the courthouse itself, unfortunately, like every other area of public service and law enforcement, we are struggling keeping up with our work based upon the resources we have. So I am reorienting the courthouse from the district attorney's point of view to focus more on the violent crimes. And even though in the perfect world I would like to focus on the methamphetamine problem that exists out here and the other drug problem, because I fear that fuels the violent felony crime problem, with resources we have to focus upon violent felonies first, because those are the people who hunt us down and kill us. So that's where I'm directing the district attorney's office at this time. Hopefully we can make a positive impact in a short period of time on the violent felons, and as we do, and we discourage hopefully others from committing violent felonies, we will work down the chain and keep picking off one area after another to improve the quality of life and the public safety in the Antelope Valley.
Questions, comments? Did you have one, Mr. Chris?
Yes, the statistics that you gave us, are they based on the Antelope Valley or are they based on Lancaster?
These are based upon Lancaster and further based upon Lancaster Sheriff's Department filings. We did not break it out for CHP filings.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, again, we'd like to extend a warm welcome. Glad to have you here and look forward to hearing more from you at our meeting. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Business Watch, Public Safety Update, Mr. Dorico.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Vieira. Just to give you an update, we're going to have our second Business Improvement Group meeting coming up on June 27th here at the city in the Emergency Operations Center downstairs. So this will be our second meeting with that first identified business district from 10th Street West and Avenue K. So far, the participation has been very enthusiastic, especially from our larger retail stores that are in the area there and their involvement. So that's encouraging. So we'll continue to develop those strategies as we work with them and identify their specific problems and try and improve that level of collaboration between all the businesses that are in that area. And again, it's a developing program. It is interesting to hear the views of the different individual stores and what they believe their problems are and issues are. But again, we'll prioritize what's taking place in that area as it impacts our larceny crimes. And again, as we've talked in the past, larcenies being our largest contributor to our Part 1 crime rate, which is not a good thing, but a good thing at the same time that we've discussed in the past as far as it relates to Part 1 crimes. Also, we are developing a program through our LANDCAP team and our LANDCAP program, our Lancaster Community Appreciation Program, for specifically identifying neighborhood watch and impact in mobile home parks. I actually met with some owners of our larger mobile home parks. As you can see, Friendly Village 1301 East I is always in our top 10 of calls for service. You can talk to the captain and the amount of resources that we're utilizing there. So we've now partnered, and it's interesting doing the research as it relates to their specific laws that are only attributed to mobile home parks and issues related to landlord-tenant issues and those type of issues with evictions and things as well that are very specific and identified, completely different than our standard laws as it relates to the civil code and civil action with landlord tenants. So that's been a learning process for us as well. So working closely with them, and there's a desire on their part to improve the quality of life in their parks and not contribute to a resource drain in our community, as well create a good living environment there for folks. So we're going to move in that direction now. So as we have a landlord training for our multifamily, single-family residents, we're going to develop that same mindset to mobile homes, specifically to mobile home parks. We have with our 2 public safety specialists, you know, they continue in our neighborhood improvement program, and what's been an issue there is historically we've dealt with code enforcement issues from a more mindset of being punitive, where our mindset is more of compliance. And a lot of these issues are either related to financial issues or lack of the ability to complete these problems to come in compliant. That's where these guys come in, working with community resources, whether that be criminal issues with law enforcement, whether that be issues where we have an elderly couple that's got a problem and they have no front yard and they have a bunch of trash and they don't have the means or the ability or physical ability to remove it. So we're working with other entities within the community to help with that. And we're working with groups like Paving the Way Foundation and some reentry resources and things they're doing to accommodate those. Currently we're at as the DA's office is aware of, and our city attorney, we're working on that Lewis M. decision that we're working with the state Attorney General and filing that case in the California Supreme Court. That's an ongoing issue that I don't know at what point we're going to be heard on that issue, with challenges as it relates to a qualified cost model for restitution on graffiti. So that case is, I'm looking forward to that case going forward and for us to have the ability to testify on why it would be counterproductive for us to do an actuary on every event because of the burdensome, especially the fact that in the city of Lancaster, just our public works crew painted and repaired over 18,000 incidents of graffiti last year in 2012. So if you thought about what it would take for us to do an actuary as it relates to restitution on that issue for every case, that's impossible.
And that probably does not include the schools, I would think.
That's correct, sir. That is only the one, our public works crew. That's not your city the school maintenance crews. That's not parks. That's just from public works. So that if you think about that in totality with the amount of reports, the investigation, the filings through the DA, the amount of resources that are being utilized, and we're basically at a complete war with the public defender's office, who's just felt that we're being unreasonable based on the amount that we're applying to this out there, which is, we haven't enhanced that amount since 2006. So we're still working on numbers from 2006 to my mind is quite fair based on what things actually cost now. So as a result of that, we're working on developing a new cost model. It's more updated, and trust me, it's significantly higher, okay, based on our numbers now. So that's going to be an interesting case as it moves forward. The importance of this case is that if it's found in our favor, then that sets precedent for all the cities through the state of California that will not have to go through this process again. And so basically cost models, as they're identified in accepted practice and have been for over 20 years, so I don't know where the challenges become so recent, but for 20 years that's been an accepted practice in the court that actually came from the court to be expeditious on these cases. So if that find in our favor here at the City of Lancaster, that'll be precedent setting for the state, and again, the cities won't have to face these challenges. On June 1st, I attended a disaster preparedness meeting at the Central Christian Church that was put on actually by the church. Susan Champion put it together, where people from Captain Scott Pulgar from the LA County Fire Department talked about disaster preparedness. We gave a presentation from our public safety office, as well as the Red Cross and them. It was excellent. Very well attended at the church. It was about 3 hours long with some question and answer series at the end, and it was very informative. And And so as we move forward in this year, and we at the city are focusing on disaster preparedness here at the City Hall, and along with some other issues as it relates to active shooters, those type of things, it was an excellent presentation that was done there, and we want to commend the church for putting that together and inviting the public to it. And I think that's it.
Lee, that meeting on the 27th, what time is that at?
What time are you starting, Tracy? 7 a.m., sir. I know you're long into your day already at 7 a.m. So.
Thank you. Other questions, comments for Lee? No?
In regards to the big program, I think it's very encouraging that there's been a positive response from the business owners. I think that was a bit of a concern at some point, so that's very encouraging to hear.
Yeah, I agree, and especially thank you for providing us that model that's being utilized in Portland, but that was a good guide to look at what had been done. I think it is encouraging because they all recognize they're having similar issues, and then there's other issues that are coming forward that the other businesses in the area weren't aware of. So it's good to be able to collaborate, and then, again, Jim's putting together a process for them to be able to communicate immediately on issues that are occurring, so everyone has a heads up on what's taking place there. And that's part of, establishing that relationship, just like we do with Neighborhood Watch, and just in that support. The sheriff, trust me, based on the amount of calls for service and what they're having to respond to, the more proactive preventative model is going to benefit all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Dorico. Public business from the floor, non-agendized items. Do we have any non-agendized requests?
We have no speaker cards.
Okay. And any closing comments from any commissioners today? Hearing none, this meeting stands adjourned at approximately 11:15, and next one will be on Wednesday, the 10th of July, 10 a.m. Thank you.